Hey, this is Dave Seymour, CEO of Freedom Venture Investments. And if you want to learn how to use your small axe to build a lasting empire, then you've got to be listening to Small Axe Podcast with my very dear friend, Nico Salgado.
Hi, welcome to the show. I'm Nico Salgado, and I chat with top industry leaders in multifamily and business. I believe that it only takes a small axe to build a lasting empire. And if you want to learn how to use your small axe to accomplish your biggest dreams and goals, then join our Small Axe community and enjoy the show. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Small Axe Podcast. Today, we have an awesome guest. His name is David Seymour. He's the CEO of Freedom Venture Investments. This guy went from firefighter to fund manager, now to saving people's lives in a different way, which I'm really excited to hear about. He has been involved in many TV and media projects, most notably Flipping Boston, if you guys have ever heard of that. Pretty awesome show. We have him today as a guest, and I'm really excited to get to know a little bit more about his background, what his current focus is, and you know what? Let's just get him right on the show. David, welcome, my friend.
Hey, Nico, thanks, man. I love a nice, concise introduction. No, right? Like we were talking before we went on air, you can get a little long-winded and egotistical when you want to start sharing a resume with people. Okay. So I like that one. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. And I tell you, there's so much to say that literally we could spend a half an hour just talking about your resume. However, people are going to get a great vibe from you once you start talking. So let's talk a little bit about where you came from in your own words.
Sure. Yeah, man. I've got a little bit of a bizarre accent. I'm not American born and raised. I'm an immigrant, but don't tell anybody. I came over from England back in 1986. Came to this country, followed a pretty consistent plan, if you will, that most people follow. You know, go to work, get a job, work hard, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. Followed that plan diligently. Look, man, I'm not a graduate of Yale. I'm not a graduate of Harvard. I'm not a King's College or an Oxford graduate, but my journey, I'm now 54 years old. My journey has been through the blue collar world into the white collar world. I talk a lot about kind of like a blue collar attitude in a white collar world, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think a lot of people that, want to look at finances and growing capital and being in a position of safety through a crazy pandemic, they want somebody who's got some calluses on their hands, for want of a better term. You know what I mean? Like I've worked in it.
I call it bite. Yeah, I'd like to work with people who got a little bit of bite to them. I agree.
Yeah. There's a lot of, highfalutin terminologies in finance. I think it carries a little egotistical strain to it every now and again. So look, man, I came through that working class world. I was a firefighter and a paramedic, as you said. I followed a good government job. That's what we needed, right? And then you'd be all set: teacher, firefighter, police officer, mailman, right? These were all the cornerstones of the fundamentals. But I experienced financial illiteracy at the same time. In America, my father was amazed by this, Nico. I was telling my dad, in America, you can actually spend more money than you earn. And he thought I was crazy. And I'm like, no, Dad, this is a great country, man. But, you can get in trouble if you don't understand that. So I found myself in a position where I was trading way too many hours for other people's money. I paid a price for that: marriages, houses, relationships. And, some people, make high-level decisions about their finances and their journey in life. I unfortunately was not that person. I was kind of like beaten into submission, and decided to take a turn back in 19. So, we crashed the market in 2000. And so about 1996, 97, I began to face some challenges that transferred into 2007 and 8, where I almost lost everything. And I found myself as a construction worker, a firefighter, retail security. And I found myself in a position where I needed to do something different. And I started this journey into real estate investing. I started at no money down real estate, a free seminar coming into your neck of the woods. You know what I mean? And that was where I started. And I knew that real estate was always a vehicle for wealth. And yet for some reason, I always considered that there was a barrier to entry, and it's interesting today where the perceived barrier to entry is for wealthy individuals. They say, hey, I can't find the great deals. I don't have the time to go find them. Or whether in my scenario, when I first started being financially challenged, the barrier to entry was, hey, you got to have $200,000, $300,000 to be in real estate. And both of those questions or answers are wrong, right? I learned to do real estate through knowledge, how to negotiate a good contract, how to build a good team. And, I did one single family, then another, then another, then another. And then I started getting some traction, and I started learning about what's called the velocity of capital, putting money to work at a higher rate of speed. Guy said to me, do you have any lazy money? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, anything that is operating at less than a 10% return is lazy money. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You can't get returns like that. It's illegal. And, you learn. So I put feet on the street. I acted on my knowledge, and, my business began to grow for sure.
Excellent, man. And where were you particularly targeting those single family homes?
Yeah. So I'm up in Boston, and I'm in the Boston market. So, I focused in my own backyard in the beginning. Now, you got to remember, I started in 2008. And if somebody asked what you did in 2008 and you told them that you were a real estate investor, they said, oh, I'm sorry. Right? That was what we walked into. We walked into a financial global crisis, and, it was an incredibly challenging time. But I didn't understand no. I didn't understand you can't. I kind of brought that firefighter mentality to it. So in my own backyard, I went after it with full conviction and belief that, I had something of value, which was my knowledge and my ability to analyze deals. I had some construction background, and we were buying houses for pennies on the dollar, renovating them. And there was still a small market of people who could qualify to buy houses. And we capitalized on that. And, it grew to a point where, it's funny, man. I don't want to jump around, but it's the way my brain works. I was in thank you. I was in a marketing meeting recently, and there was a young kid in our marketing team, 20s, collegiate, and he's like, why would anybody listen to you, Dave, when it comes to commercial real estate, which is the world I live in today? I manage a $100 million private equity fund buying commercial assets. And he's like, why would anybody listen to you? You're that guy from the TV show Flipping Boston, where you bought houses, fixed them up, sold them on TV. And the kid had a really good point, because what was interesting is that I was recognized as the single family guy. That recognition put me on a national TV show, put me on Today's Show. I'm a pundit on CNN and Fox and all of this craziness. And yet nobody ever really knew the fact that the real value or the power of real estate was created through commercial real estate, which I always had going on in the background. First one was a little two flat or a two family or a two up, two down, or three deckers, as we call them in Boston. And the power of cash flow, somebody else going to work, a tenant, and then paying us, the landlord, because we've got the knowledge, the power, the depth, the chutzpah, for want of a better term, to actually, go out and buy real estate. Everybody's a real estate investor up until the point they have to write a check for 250, 300, 400, $5 million. Right. And then suddenly they're not a real estate investor anymore, So, I was always in the game at that level. And, today it's interesting because, there's nothing sexy for TV world with regard to commercial real estate. Right. You don't get the oh my God, the pipes burst, let's go to commercial break. You know what I mean? You don't get that. You don't get that craziness. So, look, man, it's been an incredibly blessed journey. Real estate investing, both residential and commercial, not only saved my life, but it saved a lot of relationships around me. And it also put me in a position where I could go out and, number one, kind of like you do, Nico, educate first, right? You got to teach people the power of this business, so that they potentially want to invest alongside you to be able to reap the rewards of what real estate has. And I think you'd agree with me, brother. We're in an unprecedented opportunity based off of the pain and misery of COVID. And it's going to be interesting to see, what side of the equation a lot of people end up on. You know what I'm saying?
No, absolutely. And everything that you're saying is just so insightful, and there's really a ton to unpack. However, maybe we
Yeah.
should move
Yeah.
on to, you mentioned something that I want to touch on before we move on. You said value is in the commercial real estate as opposed to residential. Can you expand just a little bit on that?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, man, I don't ever want to tear somebody down to raise me up, right? But we all have opinions, and I have walked away from a lot of residential deals recently. You gotta understand something. If you're a residential buy, fix, and flip investor, all you have is another job,
Hmm.
right? It's just a job. It's a great job. Don't get me wrong, and it took great care of me. But if you don't buy, fix, and sell a single family house, you don't have any income. So it's active work.
Hmm.
Whereas in the commercial world, you're able to do the work just one time, and yet it will pay you every time.
Hmm.
That's the cash flow model in which we're in today. So it's not that there isn't look, and some people manage and hold single family houses, and that's a great strategy as well. No right or wrong. It's just left or right, right? It's
Correct.
your perspective on it. But I always was of the belief, if I've got one tenant in one property under one roof, I have 100% exposure.
Hmm.
Say that again: one tenant, one property, one roof. I've got 100% exposure. So I really enjoy, as do my investors, the diversity and security of multifamily investing or apartment house investing, where I can have 40 or 140 doors or tenants, in one complex, giving me that depth of safety, if you will, in the sense of, if I lose 3 or 4 tenants, 5 tenants, 10, I'm okay, right? As long as I buy it right, because we make our money when we buy, we
Hmm.
realize profits and gains when we sell cash flow. So that's kind of how I look at it. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I'm also in the multifamily space. Do you look at other assets besides multifamily?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't,
Hmm.
right? I don't. Not that I don't know how to analyze them. Not that I don't know how to, find the value add in them. For me, look, there's a lot of investors out there right now who are talking about to retail. Hospitality and leisure is always the first commercial asset class to go down and go down hard, and we've seen that with COVID.
Hmm.
It's also the first to recover. So when we start to see a recovery there, those are an indicator for us. But when you start looking at now the retail space, look at us, brother. We live with microphones and cameras and Zoom and online shopping.
Hmm.
Amazon is going to rule the world one day. I think Jeff Bezos will be the president of the world, and that power of what an online retail world has done. It's just been it's just so extensive now with what COVID has created. I actually took my little guy up to the mall yesterday, with our masks on, to go to a Lego store and grab some lunch, and it's a ghost town. It's a ghost town. The fear that has been ingrained in people. So that retail world is so scary right now. Like, guy said to me, he said, "Why wouldn't you invest in this particular retail complex?" And it was a large mall. He said, the operator has got it at 75 cents on the dollar or something of that nature. And I said, well, here's why I wouldn't invest in it now, because I'm pretty confident I'll be able to buy that same asset from him 18 months from now, when he can't make his financial commitments, number one, to his investors, and number two, to his institutional investor, the bank. I'll probably be able to buy it for 30 cents on the dollar. And that, again,
Hmm.
that's just my take on it. So retail is an absolute no-no for me. If retail is in your vocabulary, I'm not interested. However, multifamily investing. I listened to a podcast this morning, where the gentleman, manages $1.7 billion worth of investor capital out of Canada. And, he was talking about what's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is it's a basic, what do human beings want and in what order. And shelter has always been at the top of that hierarchy, right? Statistically, people will pay their rent and their mortgage payments if they can, before any other expenditure goes out. So, supply and demand puts us as multifamily investors in the very, very best position we've seen probably in our careers. I'm 54. I've never seen any opportunity like this in the 12 plus years that I've been investing, and my partner 30 plus years. So there's a lot of history. There's a lot of market cycles, and multifamily is always outbeaten any investment. Stock market, bond market. Did you see that thing in the bond market recently, by the way?
I haven't.
JP Morgan. Did you see that?
No, enlighten me.
Yeah, JP Morgan just put a study out. There is 31 trillion with a T, trillion dollars worth of bond investments, which are going to give a negative real yield.
Wow.
31 trillion. 31 trillion giving a negative yield. Why wouldn't you go for multifamily?
Agreed. I mean, look, there's risk in everything, but if you're talking about bringing it back to what you said, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one of my mentors likes to call it food, clothing, and apartments, because, when people cannot afford houses or cannot afford, some expenses that are just going to be too much and overwhelming for them, based on the fact that the economy is going to be in a recession, or is in fact now currently in a recession, they're going to be looking for apartments. And, people are even coming out of the baby boomer era, people are looking to downsize. So
sure.
Apartments are just something that are always going to be around. And have I changed my underwriting? Absolutely. But, you can imagine and just get the general idea that you're going to be packing occupancy is not going to be as much of an issue as opposed as is, I believe, raising rents in this time. Occupancy should remain fairly strong. And from what I've seen, has remained fairly strong.
No, I agree. And here's the other thing we have to take into consideration. There's these, they're not even variables. They're definites, right? I am confident that the single family market is going to take a massive hit. And look, everybody's screaming, David, you're crazy. It goes on the market on Monday, it gets multiple offers, and it sells for X over asking on Friday. Yeah, I get it. That's called mass hysteria, and in my opinion, stupidity, because you're not looking at a longer picture and a bigger picture. The bigger picture says that as soon as the forbearances are lifted and the bank says, okay, it's time to pay, the average American is still living paycheck to paycheck, right? They don't have that depth. That's why so many people are in so much pain right now. They don't have reserves. They were never taught to have reserves. They were taught to keep up with the Joneses, get the newest car, put it on your credit card. Don't worry about it. Refinance your house. It's going to be great. We're in America. Well, that's garbage. I lost. I know that feeling, right? So when all of this real estate, the single family market real estate, 23% of the FHA loans are in delinquency in Florida right now. 23% of the FHA loans, which are the lower price point properties, right? Your 150s to 250s. So when all of that comes to fruition to the market, you're going to see this exodus of people who can no longer afford their home. And here's the thing, in that moment of pain, how sweet is it that we can give them clean, decent, affordable, new apartment housing, right? So that they can now recover over the next 5 to 6 years. And then as we turn around again, right? As we turn around again, if they stay with us, great. But if they go back to the pain of home ownership like they did after 2008 to be where they are today, then that's on them. But that's how I look at this market right now. You couple that with it's crazy. It's a crazy time for sure.
I agree 100%. And, we are headed in, you talk about market cycles, right? And we're talking about heading, we peaked and we're heading down in a down cycle, and you're talking another 5 to 7 years. And it's not that history repeats itself, but it rhymes. And if you can't overlook these simple facts that we're heading into a down cycle. And to best prepare for that, you want to hold on to some multifamily properties. You want to now you want to start buying them and then hold on to them and not try to refinance them or even sell them at the bottom of the market, but hold on to them for a minimum of the next 5 to 7 years.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Look, there's two kinds of investors, Nico. There's your passive and your active investors, right?
Mm-hmm.
You and I are active investors. Like our fund underwrites probably 20 to 25 properties a week, goes and looks at 3, makes an offer on 1.
Mm-hmm.
So we're active. We're in the game. We manage the assets. We work the assets, repair the assets, tenancy, marketing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, this is what we do 24/7. We live, eat, and breathe it.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the passive investor who's looking at their 401k, retirement accounts, or they're looking at, their current stock accounts. And some people just can't ride the roller coaster of the stock market. They don't have enough Dramamine to get through the nauseousness of watching it rise and fall. So, that passive investor then turns around and says, okay, I know the shit's coming. I know it's coming down the pike, right? I'm intelligent enough to be able to read the signs. The Federal Reserve just said out loud, we're going to keep the interest rates low, low, low. We're probably not going to raise them at all for the next 2 years, for 2 years. Mm-hmm. So if your returns are dependent upon what the Fed does for an insurance rate, you're screwed.
Exactly.
You're going to be hurting, right? So for us as investors, that gives us a massive opportunity because my cost of capital is so low, I can now pay better returns to investors. Mm-hmm. So the passive and the active investor succeeds because their cost of capital is so low. But the passive investor really only has 2 choices: go with the flow and hope it's okay, or learn how to get passive investments which outperform at least inflation. Right? You got to outperform inflation.
Right.
And it depends on who you are. Inflation's anywhere between 2 and 9%, right?
Yeah.
So where do you go for that? Well, you go to operators, people with proven track records that can offer targeted double-digit returns, so that individual can now get through what's next, right? Get through what's next. And I think we can agree as intelligent investors with some, longevity in the business, that what is next is not going to be pretty. Mm-hmm. It's not. All the big boys have been pivoting for the past 6 or 8 months. We started to pivot right in March, and we looked at the landscape and we said, he or she who controls the capital for the next 5 to 6 years will win this race, right? We'll win this race. I'm not going to be dependent upon other people's capital to make decisions. So let's raise that capital. Let's get in control of the capital, pay the returns, the distributions, the IRRs, get in, get out 5, 6 years from now, and then rinse and repeat is kind of like the process going forward. Yeah. So the landscape is changing, brother. It's absolutely changing. It's a different game.
Okay, David, we got a lot to talk about there. So I think we're getting into your fund right now. Is that where we're headed?
Well,
I would love to talk about
I can't think in a straight line, but yeah.
So let me back up for 1 second, because I would love to get into your fund, because I'm totally curious about it. But how do you educate people on, so I've been finding a lot of fear in investors at this point. Well, sure. Claiming that, real estate, the general claim, real estate is dangerous right now. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't, and like we've been explaining, it doesn't necessarily apply to multifamily as much as it does to single family for a variety of reasons.
Correct.
So how do you approach somebody with that fear?
Yeah, it's a great question, brother. That really is. Look, people, fear is false education appearing real. So let's start there, right? Mm-hmm. I think that barrier to entry that we talked about at the beginning of this call here, that barrier to entry has a perceived height, right? And it's only through education does that barrier get lowered down, because as soon as you lower the barrier, you increase the knowledge, you decrease the fear, right? It's as simple as that. If something makes sense, people can make a decision around it. But because so many people have so much misinformation, let me ask you a question. What's more scary? Having somebody else in control of your financial future, or you being in control of your financial future? That's a question I ask often, right? Mm-hmm. ask the people at Enron how good they felt when their bubble burst. The people who suffered from, some of the investment strategies that were out there. I'm sorry if you're a Bitcoin guy or girl, but Bitcoin, come on. Can we use some fundamental common sense, people, please? And look, man, for those statisticians out there, here's what I say to them when they say it's risky. I say, watch, why don't we do a 10 and a 20-year look back? Because to your point earlier, it will repeat itself. It's cyclical. It's always been, it always will be. Therefore, we have the ability to put some predictors in place, which are based in the fundamentals of the cycles of real estate. And if you look at multifamily investing, this is important, it has the risk exposure of the bond market, and yet it has the return portfolio of the very, very best years in the stock market. So let me say that again. Commercial real estate investing, multifamily, has the risk profile or the risk exposure of the bond market, which is actually at a negative right now. That's how safe that one is, right? But it has the projection or the return portfolio or expectation of the stock market. So let's go back 10, 20 years. It has outperformed commercial real estate, multifamily, has outperformed every other investment strategy out there statistically. So for that investor who says real estate is risky, you know what's risky? Not being in real estate. Mm-hmm. You know what's risky? Relying on a fee-based 401k plan to get you to the finish line. Mm-hmm. If you are 50 years old, if you're in my age group with a couple of grays, and you sit there and you say, I'm all set, I've got 3 million in the bank, you will lose this race. Mm-hmm. If you're sitting on 5 million, there's a potential you could lose this race if you don't understand exactly what's going on with the investments. So when I look at real estate, I'm a blue collar guy, white collar world. I say, look, here's the numbers on real estate. I can buy it for this. I can put this much money into it. It's going to allow me to get this in returns, cash flow coming in. I don't over leverage my assets. So therefore I have a higher yield because we only leverage up to 65%, higher yield, higher cash flows, and then share in the equity at the time of sale and distribution as the fund exits out of the the capital control that it has for that 5-6 year period of time. Look, life is inherently risky. You can, pull a Joe Biden and stay in the basement. You could go stand on the balcony, pull off your mask, and salute the world. I don't know what's right or what's wrong, but if you really want to bring it down to its core instincts, I heard it in a comedic way. Like 3 kinds of people: people who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and then the third one's the person who turns around and goes, hey, what happened? You know what I mean? It's like, and the people who watch and the people who don't even begin to participate are the people who lose out on the options in front of them, right? That's true. I don't know if that answers the questions around dealing with their fear, but knowledge is power only if it's implemented. So we spend a lot of time educating our investors before we bring their capital into the fund.
Beautiful. Let's talk a little bit about your fund. What is your strategy? Where do you focus? How does the fund work?
Yeah. So we are what's called a Regulation D fund. We're SEC compliant. We focus on an asset class that most of the big investment companies don't look at. And what I mean by that is we buy B-class properties, multifamily, and we focus on the smaller door count. We focus on the 40 to 140 doors. We are a core plus fund. And for those of you who don't understand what that means is we take an asset that's slightly underperforming. Maybe it's got some bad managers. Maybe it needs a little bit of work. Maybe it's got a couple of tenant challenges. Maybe the rents have not been stress tested enough to see if we can get them up to a market value. And what we do is we target those assets, and then we take those assets down. We reposition, is what it's called. We take the problems that the complex has. We fix those problems. We make the property more valuable, cash flow, and then sell at an exit after 5-6 years is what we hold the capital for. So what we did was I connected with a very dear friend of mine, over 20 plus years of experience in the Gulf Coast region of Florida, which is where we do this. New England has an affinity with Florida and vice versa. You can find more New Yorkers and New Englanders in Florida, I think, than you can Floridians. Mm-hmm. So, they're not scared of that being a foreign market to them up here. We focused on I-41, which runs up the coast, Route 41 up the coast, and I-75. And that's our corridor, and it runs through the Gulf Coast region. Now, the reason we're down there is my partner has over 20, 25 years of experience doing exactly what I just described to you, buying those kinds of assets. He's raised $125 million in his career, deployed it, paid it back with double-digit returns, plus monthly, quarterly, distributions on that capital to the investors, and about $250 million worth of transactions during that period of time. So that's $250 million worth of success. So when Walter and I reconnected at COVID, he said, look, man, we can continue to do onesies, twosies. He said, or we raise as much capital as we can and we buy them all. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the advantage of buying all of the assets, right? Anything that fits our buy box, 40 to 140 doors, a certain cash on cash return, et cetera, et cetera. I said, what's the advantage to buying them all? And I knew the answer, but it's real simple. It's safety. It's safety, because you can, I always love this analogy. Guy said to me, diversify. I'm like, okay, well, what do you mean by diversification? You should have, X, Y, Z and blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, your definition of diversification is kind of like the Titanic. Doesn't matter whether you're in steerage or first class. If you're all in one place and it sinks, mm-hmm. right? It's done. Mm-hmm. So with multiple apartments all inside the fund, the investors get the depth and the breadth and the safety and the diversification. Yeah, you're still in multifamily, but you're in multi-families. Mm-hmm. So what that allows us to do is to really emphasize the economies of scale. We have the verticals in place for management. We have the verticals in place for construction. We have the verticals in place for our marketing teams to be able to reposition these assets. And I think it's important to highlight, Nico, the reason we love the 40 to 140s is because we can turn them so much quicker. Let the big boys chase the, 150 to 500 unit apartment complexes. Let them deal with those. Let them try and turn the Titanic. Because while they're doing that, we're moving our speedboat around, at great rates of speed. It's that velocity of capital that we talked about earlier. So we only buy cash flow. Mm-hmm. We only buy cash flow. I'm not interested in, a 6-month return or a 1-year return. I want to see quarterly distributions for my investors right out of the gate. And the way that we break it down, our buy box, our analysis, which is proprietary to our company, is we have a preferred or a pref return to our investors. They take the first 6% right out of the gate. That's theirs. After that 6% return, then we're working together financially on a split with the fund managers at 75-25. They take 75% of all the profits after that. And then at the end, at the time of liquidation of the fund and all the assets inside the fund, which is a 5 to 6 year, 6 years, we'll say, 1 year for repositioning, 5 years to hold. At the 6-year exit, there's again a split, and the investors are taking 75% of the profits as we sell out of that fund.
Are there any waterfall?
No, man. I'm glad you asked that question. When we started this, my partner said to me, let's look at this. And again, it's my blue collar attitude in a white collar world. I started looking at waterfalls, and I began to analyze the waterfalls of some other competitors out there. And I don't know whether this is appropriate. I'm not going to change now. It's confusing, right? It's confusing. And when there's that much confusion, two things happen. People get hurt, I think. And at the same time, somebody benefits who maybe didn't really earn all of that that the waterfall offered. And that's just my take on it. Again, man, right or wrong, I am who I am. I'm not going to change now. I like the nice, simple distribution, right? I'm not making any money if this thing doesn't go well, right? It's as simple as that. So we benefit together in the upside. And I think to be able to do all of that work and manage, we anticipate, that other deal comes through, we anticipate being somewhere around 70 million under management by the end of this year. Okay.
That's beautiful.
That's aggressive, man. That's a lot of work. And we're okay. We're okay being in a position where we do all the work and our investors get 75% of the profits. You understand? So targeted quarterly distributions, again, stress tested off of our business model, is 10 to 14% to the investors. And then their internal rate of return, which is the value of that money working, as you know, for that 6-year period of time, 22% plus is what we've targeted and done in the past. And when you look at the multiples, they're anywhere between 2.4 to 2.8 is the multiplier on the investments.
That is amazing, man. And
it's crazy. It's crazy. And the deal flow is inbound, man. I can't raise the capital fast enough to buy them all.
That's wild.
Because of go ahead.
I've been focusing for the past 8 months on Tampa Bay area, even the I-4 corridor, as you're speaking of.
That's where we are.
And I tell you, man, we're constantly changing our criteria, because anything over 100 units, even 100, like you're saying, 150 plus, the competition was just incredible with the institutional buyers that we were not making any traction at all. We were way off asking price. Now we're refocusing and doing a cold calling campaign for the 15 to 80 unit range, and hopefully we can find some traction there. But it's been very challenging. And to your point, I would really like to know a little bit more about you said that you guys are vertically integrated, or you are going to be. Do you guys have a management team in place down there and a construction team in place? Yeah. We've got management team, construction teams in place. Again, look, man, here's the thing. It doesn't matter whether it's a 100-unit complex or whether it's a single family in East Boston, right? When it's an investment opportunity, the seller is generally connected to some kind of broker, and that broker has their 5 favorites, right? It's just the way it is. And we earn that right in our careers to be one of those 5. And we're very blessed to be probably the first or second in our asset, right? To get those phone calls, to have them inbound. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, because of the track record and the consistency of execution, 20 plus years in the market, number one. But number two is having the right property management team ready to go. Our property managers walk our assets with us before we even put in an LOI sometimes. Like we're already structuring out how exactly we're going to get this done before we even get a yes that we're going to go do it. That's awesome. Yes for property management, yes for construction. And then the other advantage is the first lien position financing, the institutional capital that comes in the bank. We're in a position where we've got a relationship now that as long as our buy box is exactly their buy box, and we've already negotiated that exactly as to what that looks like, we're aggressive, man. We're making offers where we anticipate being able to close in 30 days on one of these things, as long as all the paperwork, obviously the due diligence, the financial, et cetera, is all in place. And the power of that is the fact of we're buying from distressed owners, the mom and pops. Yep. That were working this thing on a dime. Their margins were tight before they even got going. They figured it was just going to be okay. Well, okay isn't okay, right? It's a business. So, that's what gives us an advantage over a lot of our competitors down there, for sure. That's wonderful, man. All really, really great and powerful points for the listeners out there. David, I know that you mentioned you guys focus on B class. Is that strict? You're strictly B class?
Actually, so the first line item for a B class, right, is 1990 or sooner, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We've looked at some properties that have an older footprint, 80s. However, they can still meet our criteria depending on the amount of work that's actually been physically done to them. So we have an asset right now where we're just a few weeks away from 107 doors, and it's an assumable loan for us. So we can walk into this asset, market value. I think our buy price is probably around 7.5 or 8 million.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, man. It's got an appraisal in hand for 13, right?
Wow.
13 million, and we could buy it for 8, but we can assume this mortgage at for 40,000, which is ridiculous, right? 40,000 down and walk in.
Mm.
But this thing had so much of the important work already done. The hurricane window codes, the exteriors, the roofs, the landscaping. It's just a case of fluff and buff kitchens and bathrooms, which, as you know, is a nice little pop for us on the rental line item going forward. So we are concise. Are there variables? Yeah. But is it rare that we need to execute outside of our buy box? Yeah, it's very rare, unless it's a deal like I just described where, it might as well be a B class asset. And what's interesting, and you're going to see this, Nico, you're going to see a lot of the A class assets actually get downgraded to Bs because of the rental numbers, right? You're going to start to see an absorption in that market as well. So we're just aggressive. We're just very aggressive right now because it's the right time to be,
I love it. I love it, man. I love the attitude, man. I could sit here and talk to you for hours about this stuff. All right. Well, let's be mindful of your time. And I'm going to hit you with a question that I hit all of my guests with, and it's somewhat of a deeper question. So if let's imagine you had great grandkids. It was 100 years from now, and these great grandkids have a beautiful life because of what you provided them with. And they really want to know more about you. So they start digging into the history of you, great grandfather, David, and they wanted to write a book about you. So David, what would you like that book title to be?
Maybe He Did It, right? Is the title. And then in parentheses, with honesty, integrity, and decency, maybe something like that, right?
Beautiful.
I think, that's my internal mission statement, if you will. And that relays in as CEO of this company, that transpires into, into how we do everything that we do. How you do anything is how you do everything. I learned that a long time ago, right? So yeah, he did it. I was the guy who broke the mold for the Seymour chain, man.
I love it. Blue collar guy living in a white collar world. He did it. And now look what we've been provided with, just opening up the floodgates for your future generations to live successful, happy, competent, financially free, and just secure lives. And I think that's so important, man. I'm going to continue this conversation with you after this episode, but for the listeners, how can they continue a conversation with you?
Yeah, sure. Grab us at www.freedomventure.com. That's our front door. If you just want to jump on like our podcasts, our training, the education we have out there, you can go to info@freedomventure.com and, Google me, Dave Seymour, Seymour, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of that stuff. You'll be able to find me. But, there's plenty of great educational information out there. Be an educated investor. Don't be a guesser. Don't live in fear. Fear begets fear. It manifests itself over and over. Yeah, it's a crazy time right now, but those that step up, those that go into action, will come out of this the other side better than when they went in. I believe that to be true. So find people who put you first, and align yourselves with them. Make smart decisions.
Beautiful
That's
advice.
kind of how I look at it.
David, you have given aside from the wonderful energy, your insight in I can just tell your depth of knowledge is so extensive that if somebody were to not reach out to you, it's kind of a disservice to these people. I implore you guys, reach out, learn about the fund, learn about what he's doing. He's being super aggressive in the right time to be aggressive and in the right place, because Tampa, I-4 corridor, Central Florida, look, this is, like he said, people are fleeing the Northeast, heading down there. The research shows it. There's nothing, strange about it. It's not anything that's unknown. So get involved with my man, David. Reach out to him.
Thanks, brother. God bless.
All right, Dave. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on today's show, and have a great day, my friend.
Thank you, man. Take care.
All right. Hey, Small Axe community. I would like to say thank you for listening to another episode of my podcast, where we show you how to use your small axe to build a lasting empire. Now, if you liked what you heard, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. Also, if you want to get in touch with me, go to my website at smalaxecommunities.com. Book a call with me. And until the next episode, keep sharpening those axes.